Hey Tanner,
Hey Omar, how's it going?
doing great. Here we are for a second edition of Bell Time. And as a reminder for everyone tuning in, it's basically a live session where we build a business process on the fly, no preparation beforehand, and hope to explore fun tools using Flowdash, using Zapier, using all sorts of tools in the space to go from a problem to a solution within the next half an hour or so. We'll see how long it takes.
We'll see.
So what are we doing today?
Yeah, so really interesting problem for this one and very relevant topic right now. There are loads of COVID testing centers across the world, but across the country too. And there's a lot of tests to get through, unfortunately. So oftentimes what we're finding is through looking online a little bit and chatting a little bit with folks who have kind of like seen this firsthand, there's a lot of like manual processes. So thinking about, for example, going into a pharmacy or a doctor's office, there's often this sort of intake form that you have to fill out. And same is the case for COVID tests. Oftentimes, I know I've been here before, where you get just a piece of paper and kind of, name, symptoms, a little bit more like patient information. So the specific case that we're talking about right now is we heard from someone who is working at a testing center right now and processing a ton of tests, and none of it's quite digitized on the front end, meaning they're doing that sort of fill out by hand on a piece of paper style of thing that's really common in medical settings. And it's a lot of volume, but at the end of the day, they're needing to add some structure to that data. So taking from a handwritten thing, basically on a form, into a spreadsheet somewhere. So big pain point there, I think, is the numbers look like around 3,000 at the end of the day that they have to go through, and literally take these pieces of paper, transform them into PDFs through scanning, and then looking at the PDF and then looking at a spreadsheet and inputting, first name, last name, all the sort of relevant information into the spreadsheet, right, which is the really time-consuming part. So we were wondering, how could we make that more efficient?
Yeah. And one thing probably worth mentioning, this situation is just evolving so fast, and unfortunately, there has been a need to have a lot more of these testing sites across the nation, and very often you just do what you can, right? You cannot wait to build the perfect solution, the perfect software. You just gotta get scrappy because people need those tests, and I think that's why you see these paper form, people filling them in, doing what it takes, transcribing it into a spreadsheet. Spreadsheet probably goes into some, more centralized systems afterwards. But I think unlike many projects, actually maybe like many projects, you do what you just have to do what you can, and you don't have the luxury of long development cycles to build the perfect software that will support this operation. You just kind of get out there, do what is needed, and then you try to improve on. And that's something we see a lot, I guess. Just this idea of let's serve the customers, and then let's improve the process and find ways to add efficiency in record time.
Definitely. No, it makes a lot of sense, and they're at a point where they're really needing to scale, and right now it's getting a little bit bogged down with processing all these different things. And it's interesting to think about, maybe a gut reaction is to make these forms digital forms, which is definitely possible. But then there's like another route to take, which is working with the existing system and just bootstrapping it. Like, is there a way to even work with those PDFs and see if we can move faster?
Exactly. And then for these test sites in particular, my understanding when we were chatting with them is, given the increasing volume, there is a desire to move away from this, spreadsheet, manually entering, and have a system that's a little bit more distributable. So you can have an actual team of people going through it and kind of having, a few phases, if I recall, where essentially you have these 3,000, and obviously for one person to do all 3,000, that's a lot. But if you divide it by 10 people, but how do you do that in a proper way and they're not overriding one another? That's something with spreadsheets that can get gnarly very quickly, where you have, more than a few people collaborating on it, adding entry very quickly. It just doesn't work as well, but also having a second step afterwards on the verification. So that's something else that's come up, where very often the person entering the data may be going through a lot of them. Mistakes happen. That's normal. And that's really where you have a second QA phase where someone can really review and double check, okay, there's no mistake that has happened here. So that's one. And then another requirement that I think is worth mentioning is we're dealing with a lot of sensitive information here. As you can imagine, this is dealing with people's identity, some health information potentially. And so really this idea that whoever is doing some of that transcription, just being a little thoughtful around how do we make sure that people have access to the information they need, but maybe not more. People don't have to necessarily download things on their machines. Just being, respecting all that confidential, sensitive information and building that by design. Because as much as people want to do the right thing, again, mistakes just do happen when you have a process that forces you to have a lot of files on your desktops, and the onus is on you to do all of the proper cleanup. I mean, that's how mistakes happen. It's much better, I think, if you can have a system that by design provides security and whatnot. So there's just another call out, maybe as we build, something to keep in mind and something we'll see if we can solve for.
Definitely. Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, we've been hearing so much about how bogged down these centers have been, and in general, how demanding like this has been on a lot of healthcare professionals. Mm-hmm. And we saw it as sort of like a unique opportunity just to cut down some of that time, and ensure some of that security from a patient perspective as well. And yeah, that's why we wanted to jam on this.
Yeah, exactly. Cool. So let me share my screen maybe, and then we can jot a few things. As you know, I kind of like breaking down the problems first on paper before starting to build anything. And so I think we can kind of do that a little bit and really think through the end-to-end process, and then we'll dive into building. How does that sound?
That sounds great. Let's dive in.
All right. So here I'm going to share a little doc. Are you able to see it?
Yep. I'm seeing Notion.
Cool. So I was jotting some notes as we were chatting. I have an example here of an intake form that we can look at. Everything you've mentioned as far as, some information, today's date, clinician, first name, whatnot. And then some of the things I've noted is, like we said, manually filling out this form by hand. So, customers, or we'll call them customers for lack of a better name. Now, at the end of the day, these get scanned as PDF, and then, overnight, basically, they need to be transcribed into a spreadsheet.
And then exactly, that looks like you were saying, somebody or many people going through a list of files, 3,000 files, like the example we just looked at, and typing, kind of going back and forth between whatever file viewer and a spreadsheet, maybe it's collaborative, that they're using.
Exactly. And then in terms of requirements, I think, that's what we said. So it has to be by design distributable, and by design able to support this volume. A second round of verification by the QA, and we'll just call, maybe this is the senior member of the team, maybe this is someone who has the authority to review all of them. And then the last one is security by design, just trying to keep things as much as we can isolated. And so the next thing I usually like, go ahead, Tanner.
Oh, no, just one thing I would add here, and we talked about it briefly, but my gut feeling here with the folks that we talked to is maintaining that initial process with the patient is going to be important. Still having that piece of paper that they can use Yeah, so just sort of like not changing the front end and sort
Yeah,
of changing the back end and optimizing
yeah,
it a little bit.
got it. So maintaining their current process. It's yeah, I think that's a great call out. We don't have the luxury of changing how the front end works. It is how it is, and so it's really around how do we take what we have, make the most out of it.
Right, exactly.
Cool. So in terms of roles, I mean, I often like to think about roles in terms of responsibility for people involved in a process. You know, whenever you have a process, sometimes everyone's same team, equal. Other times you have different roles with different scopes of responsibility, and that can manifest in a few ways. Very often we see that in teams that have cross-functional collaboration, and there's a handoff from team A to team B. So in this case, I mean, I'm really thinking about two roles here, which is what I'll call, you know, maybe the manager. This is the person doing that final, you know, final QA, you know, ingesting the PDFs, things like that. And then you have what I'll call maybe transcriber, which is this person doing the, you know, going one by one and then filling in the information, submitting it, and so on.
Yeah, and my assumption there, and I'm sure you're getting to this, is that the transcriber is probably going to have a little bit more limited access because the responsibility is just kind of a different slice than what the
Exactly. Yeah. And that's something we see a lot with spreadsheet. I mean, something that is notoriously hard with spreadsheets is having that more granular access where, you know, you want people to be able to work and add the information, but at the same time, you're doing 3,000 a day. You don't really want, you know, this file with tens of thousands of personal information available to every single transcriber forever. And so I think, yeah, definitely having the scoping, the access is something that is important here. That's a great call out. Cool. I mean, I think that makes sense. Maybe we can start diving into the high level, you know, how is this going to work, the tools we're going to use. So I'll just call that maybe high level process / tools, right?
Yeah, perfect.
So I mean, to start, I think we'll just assume, you know, you just start, you know, with a, I guess, folder, you know, a list of PDFs, basically, a list of PDFs or a folder
Big
full
stack.
of scanned PDFs, you know, one per customer.
Mhm.
And so what we're going to do, you know, my recommendation, so, you know, Flowdash is great for tracking tasks and moving them from one person to the other one and having these granular, but we need to get some of those files into Flowdash. And one way I've seen people do that is just dropping files in a Google Doc folder. So that's one way. I mean, there's many ways. There's an API, there's direct ways of doing it, but that maybe for this demo, one easy way is basically you have a folder and then you drop your files. So I'll just say, you know, drop files in a Google Drive folder. And then what we'd want to do is maybe using an automation. So we would use Zapier, which is a great tool for connecting systems, which would listen on one side and notice whenever there's a new file that is dropped, and then create a new task in Flowdash for transcribing. So I'll just put this here and we'll refine it. This is my first initial thought here of how to solve this. So Zapier notices new file, creates a task in Flowdash. And oh, go ahead.
Just so I can sort of see where you're going, because I'm starting to visualize it a little bit in my mind's eye. There's this Google Drive folder. And what we're going to do with the big old stack of 3,000 PDFs at the end of the day is put them into that home. It's sort of a designated folder for these forms that patients have filled out. And then what we want to do is for each one of those files, we want to take that and transform it into a record in Flowdash. So to me, that sounds like it's taking the sort of, I got to open up a PDF and then I've got to have like my spreadsheet, the all access spreadsheet that you're just talking about. And I'm going back and forth between those things to now it's all sort of in one place.
Exactly.
Got it.
And I think once it's in that one place, Flowdash is where you can have a process for reviewing them. And this is where you would have the team collaborating over these 3,000 records that were created. And so I think what that process will look like, within Flowdash is it's a pipeline. So you have a few stages, is what we call them. But the first one is when there's a new document. So it's pending. It's just pending review or transcription. We'll just call it like new form. And then one thing we may want to do, especially if we have a team, we may want to auto assign to a transcriber. I'll just put a note here, because you can imagine you have 3,000. They're all the same. I don't think you want people going and cherry picking. It's kind of like you get those 100 here, you get 1,000 here, you get 1,000 here. It just gets distributed automatically so people can get started to fill it in. And so that's the first stage. It kind of comes in as a new form and gets assigned to someone. Now, when people open one of these records, so open one of these PDFs, they would want to see the PDF and have a place to enter that information. And when they do enter that information, probably say, it's done. I've entered information. So we'll call that transcribed. And then one thing here, I'll just call out, again, just small optimization, but it would be nice if you can just automatically load the next one. That way you can imagine if you're just doing transcription, you got 1,000 to go through, fill in the information, boom, next one, fill in the information, next one. So you don't have, you save a lot of time actually by not having to close the PDF, open the folder, open the next PDF, load it, just all of that. You may not feel like much, but if it's 30 seconds, 1,000 times, that's a lot of minutes. Yeah. And I think these small inefficiency gains actually do stack up to make things a lot better. So once things are transcribed, I guess it's really where it's waiting for QA, I guess, is, it goes from new form. And then once you say, transcribed, it becomes, ready for QA. I'll just put this here. And then once it's ready for QA, I guess people have two actions they can take. So two decisions to make. We'll dive into what actions really are later. But you can either say, okay, it looks good, and this is the end of it, or needs update or something. Either that or the person fixes it directly. So
right,
one of both. I'm guessing actually if something doesn't look good, the manager may just fix it directly, or who really want to have that two-step process that whoever is editing is never the one approving, we could kick it back. So maybe we'll just say submit, I don't know, redo, redo form. Like someone has to redo it. And then finally, once we have everything, this is that big step, they do need a CSV or a spreadsheet at the end. And so I think that's really where you download CSV with all the information. And this will be the transcriber doing this step, and this will be the manager doing these two steps. How does that sound at a high level?
It looks good. It looks good. And I think in the future, I think this is perfect for our MVP. And I imagine that more downstream from this, once we have all the information transcribed, once it looks good, then we need to use that information to make some other decision.
Exactly.
Or send it somewhere else, whatever that may be. So I could see exactly. Somebody, the manager, or maybe even another role coming in and clicking another button that is, send confirmation to patient or something like this.
Yeah, that's true. Ideally, even this step, this download CSV, again, just something we would want to fix. And I don't actually know what happens afterwards, but that would be the next thing to fix, is what if we can not have to actually download that CSV. Again, files on someone's machine is just never a good thing. It's always better to have things connected, flowing safely, rather than relying on, file downloads here and there.
Right. And even right now, though, like we're already layering sort of that security piece, the security problem of a lot of different people having access to everything on the spreadsheet, and saving time, like you were talking about, the jumping back and forth between PDF and spreadsheet. If we can tighten that up into a single view and then auto move to the next one, all those seconds
Yep.
moving across 3,000 records every day really help.
Yep. Cool. All right, should we try? Should we begin?
Yeah, let's try.
All right, let's get started. This is where the fun begins. A lot of context. But maybe we can start actually with just the beginning. Let's have this Google Drive, this Zap, push things into Flowdash. And so I have a few things here. So I have Flowdash open, have my Zap here open here, and then I have my Google Drive where we can go here and upload documents. And so like we said, we're gonna have a Google Drive. So maybe I'll actually create a folder here. This is something I've never done also, so I'm actually kind of excited to see how this works with Zapier. I've never connected Zapier in a Google Drive, and I hope it's all possible. I hope we don't get blocked. So let's call it, COVID test request forms. There we go. We have our folder here. We're going to create our workflow. We'll call it COVID request form transcription.
Sense.
All right, so we have our workflow. Quick reminder here on the workflow. A few things that are familiar, but if anyone is not familiar with this interface, in here we have records or rows with columns. This is a little bit similar to your spreadsheet view. The one difference is your columns can actually be a lot stricter. So you have a text field, a date field, and the one that we're interested in is going to be a file field. So you can actually have your files live in here as you're transcribing them. Stages, which are where you'll be able to configure which status. This is where we'll configure the status of any COVID test request form, whether it's in progress, whether it's completed, whether it's transcribed, whatever it is, we'll get to define it. And then this is where you have your team. So the team of people that we'll be inviting to review it, manager, transcribers. And so we'll dive into some of the settings and how to do that. That's a very, very quick high level of this. It'll make a lot more sense in a second. But the main thing, I guess, to do is have that actual field, which is the PDF form. And this one is actually a file attachment. And so we'll create this field. It should be required, I'm thinking, because it doesn't really make sense without. What do you think, Tanner?
I think it makes sense. Yeah, we're starting with the form in every case.
Cool. Awesome. So we'll do this. And then maybe for now, we'll leave everything else as is. We'll clean this up as we go through it, and we'll find out what information we need to have. But for now, let's just see if we can, I'll delete all of these. Let's just see if we can get data in here with the form. That's kind of the first step here.
Jumping ahead just a little bit, just so I'm visualizing, I'm a transcriber.
Mm-hmm.
And once we're done with this, I'm going to see sort of my name pop up underneath yours on the left-hand side. And when I log in, when the time is ready, I'm just going to log in, and I'm going to be able to see my name popped up against the information that I have to transcribe that's already been auto-assigned for me. And maybe I can click on like my active task to go through, and then I can just boom, 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 go through.
Exactly. Yeah, that's the end goal. Just making it that simple to log in. You have your list, you go through one of them. When you're done, you're done. It says no task, everyone's happy.
I do well with simplicity, so that's good for me.
Cool. Well, let's dive in here. Let's go ahead and create a Zap. So Zap will create. So the first thing, I guess, Google Drive. So let's give it a name. So push PDFs from Google Drive to Flowdash. So let's try this out. Google Drive, an event when there's a new file is added to a folder. Let's continue. We need an account.
One thing I'll note on the last step, maybe the file in the folder, because I think the one selected is inside any folder.
Good call. New file in a folder. Yep.
Right.
Definitely. Here, let me add another account, actually. So I'll go add another account. I'm going to allow Zapier to see the files. Boom. Okay.
Nice.
So we're connected. And let's continue. I'm wondering if it's going to ask which, oh, there we go. Perfect. I was kind of hoping it would ask me which folder it is. And we create a folder here. Continue. Now it's time to test the trigger. So that's one thing I really like about Zapier. They always kind of guide you one step at a time, making sure you can test it and make sure things are working so far. So let me go ahead, maybe here we'll find a recent file. So let me go add maybe a file here. There we go. I'm uploading a file. Let's go ahead and test this trigger. Cool. So it looks like you found the file. Sample COVID intake form. Continue. So this first half is done. So now, in theory, whenever there's a new file, it's going to get detected. And now the action. What do we want to do when a new file is created? We'll use the Flowdash integration, which is also available in Zapier. And this time we want to create a task. So let's go ahead and do that. And we'll pick the bell time account. And we pick the workflow. So now in terms of workflows, we have one workflow we just created called the COVID request form transcription. So we'll pick this up, and it's kind of amazing how fast some of these things go. So we'll just do this. And now these are the fields actually in Flowdash. So you kind of see that now that we've connected this workflow here, name, PDF form, or the two columns, the two fields, and we can set a value. So I'm thinking the name we keep empty for now, or if we want, we can actually have the PDF name, if that's useful, and then the actual document. Let me move this window here. Let's show all options. This is where I'm less familiar, I guess, and so we'll experiment here if there's an actual file that can be uploaded. It looks
at the very top, I think it was the second field. There's a file, and I think Zapier just kind of
file
bubbles it down into not shown. I think it's good, just by the way, to send the name over. We may end up renaming that field because I think the file name in Flowdash may just be generic when we send it over.
I got it. So we'll send a name, and then for the file, we'll put the file and continue. And let's try it out. Let's test and see what happens. All right, so the task was sent to Flowdash, moment of truth. We do have a file here. And if we open it, we have this uploaded file. I can open it, looks like that's the one. And then we have the name as well. So it's working. This went pretty smoothly as far as sending it up. I'm going to turn it on. That way, any new file coming in through this folder, those 3,000. I don't really know what this is. Let me remove it. Whenever a new file is uploaded, it should automatically show up in Flowdash. Let's go ahead and try it out, actually. I'm going to just put another file here. Oh, they have the same name. So let me rename it. Let's call it, form number 2. Put another file here. It's uploaded. And then this Zap should trigger. Now, one thing that's worth calling is I know a lot of these Zaps, when they look at folders to upload to somewhere else, very often it's on a schedule. And what that means is you may check every minute, every 2 minutes, every 10 minutes. I'm not actually sure what this schedule is, but one trick for testing is you can trigger the run. And I think that automatically will check. So let me just trigger the run. And that is looking for the new files and pushing them. And that, when testing, this is really useful. But also in this case, if we're uploading 3,000 and we're waiting for them to get pushed, we could also just manually say, okay, well, check, there is something new. It's once a day. There's a lot of things. And the other 23 hours and 55 minutes, there's nothing to check for.
Definitely. Yeah, I imagine what this would look like is, once we've got those 3,000 PDFs, then maybe sort of once we're dragging them over into Google Drive or whatever the process is, they'll just be sent in batches when Zapier runs on that schedule.
Exactly. Cool. Well, we got the second file. So let's go back here a little bit and we'll gonna put a little check mark here for us to
that
keep
feels
track
good.
of where we are. And it feels good to mark things done. You know what, actually, I just realized there's a checkbox here. So let's actually just do that, even though emojis are pretty cute. Let's do
Shout
this,
out Notion.
drop. So note this is done. And now is when we actually build a workflow within Flowdash. Cool. So a few places we can start. I usually like to actually go with the tabs here. That kind of gives me a little help. So there's a data tab, which is essentially the information that every record should have, or the columns in our spreadsheet looking view. Yeah, maybe we can start with that, because you know, at the end of the day, when you open one of these tasks, you want to transcribe the information. And if you want to transcribe the information, you need two things. One is you need to see the form you're transcribing. And the second thing is you need a place to type the information. It sounds very basic. And so let's go ahead and do that. Maybe we can first show the form and then create a place for people to enter it.
Perfect.
So in that case, we're going to go into layout editor. So layout here allows us to modify this view and really customize it to something that is a little bit more efficient for people to look at. And so we have this concept of blocks. And in this case, we want to render this PDF. So we want to have a file preview, and we'll call it the intake form. And the file we want to show is this PDF form here. Great. So it's going to show all of this. I don't think anything else here really matters for now. So maybe this is good enough for here. What do you think, Tanner?
Yeah, looks good.
Yeah, there we go.
Nice.
Do you think we should make this a bit longer, actually, just so that you don't have to scroll?
If we can eliminate the scroll, that would be nice, just to move quickly.
So let's go here. I think we can put a max height. So I'll just put a, you know, maybe like 1,000 or 1,500 pixels here. We'll go back to the task, and this just kind of eliminates some of it, which now that I'm looking at it, I'm not sure, because if we do eliminate it, we kind of scroll away from here. So I'm wondering actually if it was better to keep it as is. So you scroll within the PDF, but you still have this information in view.
Yeah, I'm curious. Yeah, I think it'll unfold a little bit when we go through it, because I can see a couple of different ways, like splitting up the patient information into, they do it in the PDF anyway, reporter information, patient information, and clinical information, and potentially like structuring blocks in a way that's sort of aligned with the PDF would be interesting too. That's
true. So maybe we'll keep it as is, and then we'll just decide later if what makes sense.
Let's see how it feels. Yeah.
Cool. So now that we have the view, the form we want to transcribe, we need somewhere to transcribe it in. So we basically need to add columns, the columns we have on set spreadsheet. If we had the spreadsheet, we could have just uploaded it, get all the columns automatically. But you know, in this case, I think we'll just have to go and create them manually. And so I'm just going to go ahead and do that. I don't know if there's a good, well, actually we have the form. So let me open the form here in a new tab so we can reference it. And what I'm thinking is maybe we'll just do the first two, just to keep things simple for this example: the reporter information and the patient name, patient information. Cool. So today's date. So we'll go here. We'll add a few different fields. So today's date. Oh, that's kind of cool. I recognize that it was a date. That's perfect. Hospital/clinic. Hospital/clinic. Clinician name. And then the phone number. And then in terms of patient information, first, last, phone, address, city, zip code. So first name, last name, address, city, zip code, state. And we had county as well. I'll just put it in here, county. Date of birth, age, and sex. So just put date of birth, and let's just put sex. Maybe this is good enough for, you know, again, for the example. In practice, you know, we add all of them, but I think that's good enough to start. And so what we'll do at this point is set the types for all of these columns, because they're not all text. So some got already, today's date is a date, phone already got transcribed. But for actually, I'm curious, do you think we should keep phone, or should we make it text in case people enter invalid phone numbers? That will happen where someone does, write a phone number that's not valid. And, what does the transcriber do in that case?
That's actually a really interesting question. I mean, I could see it going several different ways. Potentially just manually reaching out if there were sort of an email field instead. If we really needed the phone number, then we could reach out for it. Maybe it's the case that it's not required on the form, so it's just kind of an omit if it's not legible. And then there's kind of like an interesting case where it's like a request for more information potentially from a patient to process it, or somehow, which is probably a whole other video in itself, but being able to have an email address and send like sort of a corrections form to somebody to fill out would be another way to do it. But yeah, I mean, I think phone is probably fine for now, because there's not much else we can do if it's invalid.
Okay, perfect. So we'll keep phone. First name, my name, zip code, state, date of birth, sex. We'll put a few options here. So we'll make this maybe a single select. And so in this form, they have two options, male and female. So we will add those options, male, female. That way people have to pick one of those choices. And then just looking at the form here, everything else seems like it's just text. Hospital, clinic, actually maybe another one where, ideally maybe there's only 3 clinics that people work at, clinic, A, clinic B, or clinic C. And I think everything else just as is. Anything I forgot here?
I think this makes sense. I was going to say zip could be a number, but we can keep it as text in case people want their full zip dashes.
So zip is an interesting one, actually. So I don't know for a fact, but it may not work as a number if there are zip codes that starts with 0. And that's something I've run into in the past. I forgot if it was zip codes or phone numbers, but sometimes it's tricky because if it's a number, the 0 gets omitted and now suddenly it's a mistake. So something to keep an eye for. I don't know if zip code starting in 0 is a thing or not. Just it reminded me of a time I made the mistake, basically coding a field as integer, and that backfired. We had to change it to text down the line.
I was just going to ask you if this was like a programming problem you ran into once.
It definitely is. This is from experience.
Well, I trust you on that one. Sure.
Cool. So let's save it. Let's go back to our layout. And now what you see is all of the fields that we added show up here. I think you had a recommendation earlier to organize it maybe the same way as the form. Should we do that?
Yeah, definitely. I think it would be really nice if I could look, as a transcriber at the form on the right and then at this information on the left, and just kind of move sequentially top to bottom.
That makes sense. Let's do that. So in here, what we basically have is this block with the information. We get to configure what's visible and what's not. So name, PDF, probably not needed. Created on, updated on, not needed. But these are the first ones. So today's date, hospital, clinician name, phone number, and everything else will just hide for now.
Oh, I see. Perfect. So breaking it up into those different sections on the form so that it's familiar to me because I know the form.
Exactly.
Putting it in Flowdash now.
Then we'll add another one, which is similar, just different name. This one will be patient information. And what we'll do in this one is basically the remainder. So we'll remove these. Now we have first name all the way to here. And we'll save those changes. And then activity log, maybe we'll keep that for now. Doesn't hurt. Just shows us, who created what, who did what, when, and whatnot. Comments, maybe we'll keep as well. Doesn't hurt.
I might have a question.
So this is what we have.
Totally. For
Exactly.
you, if I forgot something, I'm like, hey, Omar, can you take a look? I'm not sure I can read this part. Just for second
Exactly.
set of eyes.
And sometimes that's useful actually when we dive into the process. But one pattern I've seen with a lot of these processes, we want them to be perfect. You come in, you transcribe, you send it, but reality is not that easy. And sometimes you run into cases where you just don't know what the right thing is. Maybe you can't read it, maybe it's unclear, maybe the PDF is empty, maybe it's illegible. And in those cases, sometimes you may want to have an escalation path where you say, I'm just going to escalate that or flag this. It's not done, but it's blocking me.
Right.
I'm just going to push it to a manager to review it. It's kind of a separate queue. And this is where that comes in. And these are kind of things, maybe if we have time at the end, we can also add.
Totally. I can sort of click a button that says escalate, and I can put my reason or something, and it auto sends to you.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Cool. So what this would look like now is we can basically go on, edit, modify the information, save it, and so on. So I'll do some of that transcription a bit later. But for now, let's go and build the workflow. Now we have our page. Let's actually build the workflow where here it says start. We'd want it to say submit.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool. So I'll go back here just quickly. Because a new form, auto assign, we'll do that afterwards. We'll deal with roles maybe a little bit after. But let's do the actual workflow. Yeah.
Do it.
Cool. So let me delete what we already have. And then remember here earlier I mentioned we have stages. Now we only have one because I deleted the other ones, not started. But these are the stages that we were talking about earlier, where we said there's a few stages. It's a new form, ready for QA, and then maybe completed. So very simple workflow in here. So not started, ready for QA. Maybe this is going to be blue. Just move this here. And then maybe the last one, which is completed or validated, maybe is a better word.
Right.
Make that one green. It's an end stage, meaning we're done with the file. And so once we have these three stages, we need transitions to go from one stage to another. This is what we call action. And so we do that by dragging from one stage to another. And in here, we'll call this one ready for QA. Now, what this does is basically says whenever you have a task at the not started stage, you have a button that is available called ready for QA. And clicking this button moves you to the ready for QA stage. And we can see that actually if we go back here and we open one of these, now we have this ready for QA, and then if you click it, it moves you to the ready for QA stage, which we'll actually modify, but that's kind of what at a high level this does. And then similarly, when you're ready to QA, what are the actions you can take? I said there are two. It's either it looks good or someone has to redo the form. So if it looks good, go to validated, looks good. Otherwise, you have an action, which we'll call needs update, maybe.
I think that makes sense. Yeah.
Make it orange. And what this one does, it basically just sends it back to the pile of not started. In in practice, we can get more sophisticated. It's the redo pile or emails the person who did it. For the time being, let's just keep it simple. It just goes back to the beginning of the pile. Someone else picks it up, do it, goes for QA. I mean, at this volume, that may actually be the more efficient way of doing it. Is just let's just redo it.
Go back.
Yeah. So once we have that, I'm looking here. I mean, we have these, and then I mean, let's go through it just to see here, and then we'll add some guardrails and whatnot. But what we have here, you have this here, ready for QA, looks good, he moves it. Now, obviously, it's all empty, and having something validated that's all empty is not great. Again, mistakes happen. We don't want mistakes to happen. Right. So let's actually add some guardrails maybe to it. And this is one of the cool things of using a system like this, in a spreadsheet. Mistakes happen all the time because they can happen, and people are human. And as much as possible, we want to just make it easier, not easier, harder to make mistakes. So we want to make it easier for things to go as planned. So we'll add some requirements. We'll say that, in order to send something as ready for QA, you need at least, today's date, hospital clinician phone number. we'll assume these are things that you just need on every single form. You need first name, last name. You probably need, date of birth, sex, maybe. And then we'll assume that maybe it's okay if you don't have the address.
Right.
I don't know what's actually required, but we'll just assume that's the bare minimum someone needs to fill in order to get a test. And so we'll require these before they get ready for QA.
So now, as an operator, as somebody transcribing, as I'm trying to move as quickly as possible through these, and I press QA, okay, perfect. You're gonna sort of enforce that I have that information.
Exactly. Yeah. So when we come here, let's say, okay, I'm going in, ready for QA. It's going to tell you, oh, wait, we cannot actually send it to QA because all of this information is required before you can move on. And so what would have to happen is, I really have to go here and, okay, just look at the date, 1/14/2022. The hospital clinic was clinic A, and maybe the clinician was, again, John Doe MD. Clinicians is another one that could be a great drop down, actually, if we know in advance there's only so many of them. The phone number here, 919. Well, that's a lot of fives. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. This is why we have a QA process afterwards. So we save it here, scroll down, patient information. So this is Harry Potter. Oh, that's so funny. I actually watched the play last night.
Oh,
the
really?
Harry Potter play. Yeah.
That's funny. I'm reading the first book right now. That's hilarious.
It's so good. The play was phenomenal. Highly recommended.
Noted.
975 Hogwarts Lane, San Francisco. 999999. The county is not here. California, 1/1/1990. And finally, this is a male patient. And I think we forgot actually the patient phone number is what I'm realizing.
Mm-hmm.
This is the clinic phone, and then we need a patient phone number. I don't have it here, but that's fine for your example. And what's going to happen here is when I send this ready for QA, it actually does go through because all the information's here. So
Right.
We're good. We're making progress.
Perfect.
Next thing we wanted to do is, as soon as you're done with one, it just brings you to the next one.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a few things we wanted to do. This is where things start getting a little bit magical, I think, and we can really start getting some of those efficiency gains. So maybe what I'll do actually is I'll invite you here.
Perfect.
And we'll assume that you are, I'll call you collaborator, but we'll change that. Let's just assume I'm the manager and then you are the transcriber.
Okay.
And here it says collaborator, but really we can rename that so it's easier for us to know. So what I'm doing here is we can actually customize these roles. What we call collaborator here, we'll rename it as transcriber. And then we can also, do a few neat things and define, okay, well, what, as a transcriber, what should you have access to?
Mm-hmm.
Can you see all the fields? I think that makes sense. I think that's fine. Can you create new tasks? Probably not, because they come automatically through this app. Can you update them? Yes. Can you delete them? Absolutely not. That would be terrible. And you cannot export tasks as CSV. That's something the manager does. You shouldn't have that ability. Are you able to see all tasks, all forms for everyone? No, you should only see things that are assigned to you, but not things that are assigned to other people. Again, we're thinking of distributing this between a team of people and just a lot more focus if you only see what you have to do. How do you actually go through the workflow using the actions that we've defined? Those are the only ones we really want you to see. And then which actions can you perform? You're not responsible for the QA side of things. So really the only thing you can do is say that things are ready for QA. This is the only permission you have. And so what we've just, sorry?
One other question I had was, I was just thinking, I was trying to put my manager hat on a little bit, and I can use all the guardrails that you can provide me. One thing that seems important is to not lose that document. Can we get even more granular and sort of not allow me as a transcriber to edit the document?
Yeah, actually, yeah, we can basically maybe you don't even need, maybe you need to see it, but you cannot edit it. So let's just say you're able to see the form and a PDF, but you cannot edit it, remove it, and whatnot. So let's be even more specific here.
Perfect. Perfect.
Then we'll save it. And this is, I mean, it's funny, you scroll, we do this, it doesn't look like much, but this is really powerful what we just did here. I mean, if we pause for a second, I mean, you'll log in, we'll look at it, but this suddenly makes it so much easier to split across people and ensuring that people are not, seeing too much information, it's divided. So maybe the next thing we'll do, we'll go into the automation and we'll do that auto assignment. Now, automations allow you to set rules that get triggered whenever certain conditions are met. This one's really easy. We'll call it auto assign tasks. And we'll say whenever a task is created, we're going to assign it to someone. And let's say we're the 2 people working on it. But you can imagine if you have 10 people, at all 10 of them, 10% each. This is how it gets distributed. Over time, if you have someone who's much faster than other people, you can tweak it, or if the manager gets less, but we'll just keep things even for now. And what this will do here, let me go ahead and create it. Whenever a new task is added, it's automatically going to assign it to someone. Again, super useful when working in team. And we'll go ahead and test that out afterwards. Actually, let's test it out now. Let me drop something here.
Nice.
Let's add a third form here. And then we'll just trigger, it looks like the zap is still going on here. But let's trigger it again, just so that we get something happening quickly. So it's running this. Boom, we have the third one. Now the automation is running a little bit like Zap, it takes a few seconds. And then what we will see once the automation runs, they should get automatically assigned to someone.
Maybe a refresh will do it.
All right, let's try. Boom, refresh did it. You got assigned to me. And so now, I can go and do everything. So ready for QA wouldn't work. I have to enter the information. And I think really the last thing maybe I want to do here, I'm looking here, we did the auto assign, automatically loading the next one. I think that's basically the only thing we want to do besides the export. And that one's an easy one. So let's go ahead and do it. And then we can try the whole end-to-end process. How does that sound?
Awesome. Let's do it.
Cool. So I'll go into Flow Builder. And the first one is whenever someone says it's ready for QA, what do we want to do after the action is completed? Stay on the same task as the default, but in this case, we know we want to navigate to another task because efficiency, just want to keep going. So we'll navigate to another task where the stage is not started. So we want to find another form that is not started, that is assigned to the user performing the action. So it's basically going to go through my own queue of work. So I can, again, just go one after the other. Similarly, I think when things look good, as a manager, you're probably reviewing 3,000 or a whole lot more. So similarly, we can say, let's just navigate to another task. And that task is going to be in the ready for QA, and it's assigned to me. Need update, same thing. Navigate to another task, ready for QA, assigned to me. And then the last thing maybe I'll want to do is, when we do say something is ready for QA, we kind of want to pass it over to someone else. And so what we'll do in here is when things do move to QA, we also want to change who it's assigned to. And I think, again, this comes in handy if you had multiple reviewers. I'll put myself here, but imagine you had, more than one person reviewing them. You can add as many as you want, and now it gets distributing between one of the 4 reviewers, a lot easier to manage. In this case, I'll just assign it to myself when it's ready for QA. And I think this is our workflow. We can go ahead and try it out. See what that looks like.
One note here, just because I'm kind of anal about organization, is can we sort of adjust the columns like that? For example, I don't really care looking at this about created on, updated on, just kind of the simple parts.
Yeah, 100%. So let's actually hide some columns. That's a good point. And the thing we really care about, I would think, are, the dates and the clinic where things happened.
Mhm.
I don't know if there's any valid reason for showing anyone's information. That's just not necessary. So again, it's all about people should only see what is important and no more. And all that's important is the date and then the clinic. And then maybe one other thing I'll do actually is I'll sort by date in terms of the oldest to the newest. Because maybe what we want to be doing, well, granted, when they come in, they don't have a date. So maybe what I'll do is I'll have it created on, which is the date that the form was uploaded, which should be in theory the same as today's date before it's been filled in. And the main thing I was thinking is, let's say things do start stacking up. I'm wondering if we should just go in order or not, but maybe we're getting complicated here. Maybe we can skip that for another part. But long story short is there's a way to have a default sorting so that whenever people come in here, to just go from the first one and do it that way. When you have a few thousand, you don't want to, if someone's been waiting a week, let's get those first and then moving time versus serving the new ones. And some poor people, he's just stuck forever at the bottom of the pile. That would not be great.
Definitely. I think we could get advanced later with different types of views. Like I would imagine that you as a manager want to look at things a little bit differently than I as a transcriber do.
Yeah.
For example, like maybe a quick way to access everything that you need to take a look at again, if we were to add that stage. Or ready for QA and sort of sorting, like you said.
Yeah.
Or if we got more advanced and added that other stage of needs more information or escalated, then maybe there's just a quick button to view that.
Yeah.
Whereas for me, I just need to look at those that are assigned to me, maybe
Exactly.
adding some filtering on dates.
Absolutely. So let's go ahead and maybe do a final run through and see what that looks like in the end. So I'm going to remove this. I'm going to remove these, and then I'll upload a few, and then we'll just see in action the whole process. And maybe if you can share your screen afterwards, we'll kind of see that difference between what I see as the manager and then what you see as the transcriber. So we upload all the forms. The zap will kick in. Again, I'll just use this little trick here to trigger it to run. So it's running. Things should get automatically pushed. So we see they're starting to come in here. We should have 8 of them coming in. As this is happening, we have 8. Now we have the automation that is running, the auto assignment of tasks. So if we go back, we should have some assignments. So we see that I got a few, you got a lot more than me. That's just how odds work. But I'm able to see all of them. This is the important part. So I see all of them, yours and mine. And then maybe we can dive into your review, see what you are seeing as the transcriber. How does that sound?
Let's do it.
Cool. So let me stop sharing here. And maybe we can dive into your view of the world.
All right. Can you see my screen?
Cool. I see your screen, and the first thing I notice, I guess, is just how much simpler the view is.
And I only see my tasks that I have to get through.
Yeah, one thing I'll call out is before we were in the editor view, so we had all these options and so on. But for a transcriber, you just want to see what's the work I have to do, nothing else. And so that's why it's very, very focused.
That's it. All I've got to do is click on one and get started. So that's what we were looking at before. It looks very familiar. And, if we were to go through this, I'd kind of basically do exactly what you were doing before. Clinic A, John Doe, MD. And this was the complicated lot of 5s phone number. There we go. Okay, and I'm ready. Okay, no, I'm not quite ready. We need a little bit more info. Harry Potter. And this was 975. Hogwarts Lane, San Francisco. And a lot of nines. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. Maybe I missed one or something.
We have a QA for that. So
We have a QA. All right.
yeah.
Date of birth was 1/1/1990. And then there we go. All right. Now I'm ready. Oh, no.
Uh-oh.
Looks like something happened. Okay. So
Oh, so
now,
the next one loaded.
next one loaded. Now I'm in 2 of 6. So then I just go through the same process, and basically this will be a new form, and I keep going through the rest of my queue. If I pop back over here, now I see all of those that still need to be worked on, because when I clicked ready for QA, I think that kicked it off to you. And as we described before, I'm done.
Exactly. And I think that's one of, you know, that security aspect. You cannot see the ones you've done. They're already in QA now. They're out of your plate. You cannot even access them. And that's, again, great, so that the information is not available for everyone. This is ready for the next stage.
Exactly. Yep. And in theory, if, you know, there were 3 or 4 or 5 or more transcribers, then this would be that 3,000 divided by that number. And I'll just work through this, and hopefully we can get our work done faster.
Exactly. So I think, you know, this is it, I think, Tanner. And we basically created, you know, with this, you know, no code and all these tools. I mean, just incredible how fast we build this. But we basically have a system where you can upload 3,000 files. They get distributed. Each one have their own custom UI where they can look at the form side by side with the information they have. They don't need to download any file. When they're done, their queue is empty, and then it gets kicked off. You have security built in. I mean, this is the kind of thing that would, you know, if you were to build something from scratch, it's a big project, and we did it in about, you know, an hour, and it's ready to go. So it's yeah. So I'll send a message. We'll see if this gets rolled out, but I think it's ready for prime time.
Ready for prime time. Let's do it. And always looking for more ideas for build time. And if you feel like you have, you know, a relevant use case like this one, then yeah, we'd love to do something with you, build something alongside you.
Yeah. All right. Fun stuff, and looking forward to the next one. See you, Tanner.
See ya.